The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow over the produce aisle. Ethan's fingers grazed the cool skin of an apple. His mind elsewhere in the bills piling up. The job he hated. The ache of loneliness that clung like damp fog. Then, a jolt. His hand brushed against another, warm and calloused, sending a shock through his veins. He looked up, startled, into a pair of green eyes that held both curiosity and caution. The man, blonde, broad-shouldered, maybe a year or two older than Ethan's 25, smiled faintly, clutching a loaf of rye bread like it was a shield. "Sorry," the man said, his voice low, almost lost in the hum of the grocery store. Ethan's heart thudded, louder than it should have. "No, my fault," he mumbled, but neither of them moved. The moment stretched, fragile and electric, as if the world had paused just for them. Ethan Carter had never believed in fate. Growing up in a small Ohio town, he'd learned early that life was a series of calculated steps. Keep your head down. Work hard. Don't draw attention. Being gay in a place where different was a dirty word meant surviving. Not dreaming. But at 25, now in Chicago, he was still figuring out how to live without looking over his shoulder. The grocery store on West Addison was his refuge, a place where he could blend into the crowd. Just another guy buying apples and instant noodles. That evening, though, the store felt different. The man with the green eyes, whose name Ethan would later learn was Lucas Hayes, lingered nearby, pretending to inspect a head of lettuce. Ethan caught him glancing over, and his stomach flipped. He wasn't used to this, someone noticing him, not with judgment, but with something softer, something that felt like possibility. "Those apples any good?" Lucas asked, breaking the silence. His voice carried a hint of a southern drawl. Maybe Kentucky or Tennessee, smoothed out by years away from home. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. They're okay. Firm, I guess." He held one up, feeling foolish. "You cooking something?" Lucas chuckled, a sound that warmed the sterile air. "Nah, just trying not to live off takeout." "You?" "Same." Ethan hesitated, then added, "I'm Ethan, by the way." "Lucas." The man's smile widened, and Ethan noticed a small scar above his eyebrow, a thin white line that made him wonder about the stories Lucas carried. "You come here a lot?" Ethan nodded, gripping his basket tighter. "Yeah. Predictable. Comfortable." Lucas tilted his head, like he was trying to read something in Ethan's face. "I get that. Sometimes you need a place that doesn't ask too many questions." They talked for 10 minutes, standing between the apples and the avocados, about nothing and everything: Chicago's brutal winters, the best dive bars, the way the city felt alive but lonely. Ethan didn't know why he kept talking, why he didn't just grab his groceries and leave. But Lucas's laugh, the way his eyes crinkled, made Ethan feel seen in a way he hadn't in years. When Lucas said, "Hey, you want to grab a coffee sometime?" Ethan's breath caught. He'd spent so long guarding himself, building walls higher than the Chicago skyline. But something about Lucas, his easy confidence, the warmth in his gaze, made Ethan want to take a chance. "Sure," Ethan said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'd like that." The coffee date turned into 3, then a dinner, Then a late-night walk along Lake Michigan, where the city lights danced on the water. Lucas was a carpenter, working freelance jobs across the city, his hands rough from years of sanding wood and swinging hammers. He'd grown up in rural Kentucky, where being openly gay wasn't an option, and had moved to Chicago at 22 to find a life that felt like his own. Ethan, a graphic designer scraping by on freelance gigs, shared his own story leaving Ohio, chasing a dream of freedom, but finding isolation instead. Their connection was immediate, intense, like a spark catching dry grass. Lucas was bold where Ethan was cautious, quick to laugh where Ethan overthought. But they balanced each other. Lucas teased Ethan about his obsession with perfectly ripe avocados. Ethan rolled his eyes at Lucas's terrible taste in dive bar jukebox songs. They argued about whose turn it was to pay for dinner, but always ended up splitting the bill, laughing as they counted out crumpled bills. One night, 6 months into dating, they sat on Lucas's worn leather couch in his small apartment, a half-empty pizza box between them. Ethan leaned against Lucas, his head on his shoulder, and said, "This feels real, doesn't it?" Lucas turned, his green eyes serious. "Yeah, it's the realest thing I've ever had." Ethan's chest tightened. He'd never let anyone in this far. Never trusted anyone enough to imagine a future. But with Lucas, he could see a life built together. Messy and imperfect. But that vision wasn't without cracks. Ethan's insecurities crept in. Old wounds from a childhood spent hiding who he was. Lucas, too, carried baggage, fears of rejection. Memories of a family that hadn't spoken to him since he came out. Their first real fight came after a long day, when Ethan snapped at Lucas for leaving dishes in the sink. It wasn't about the dishes. It was about Ethan's fear that Lucas might one day walk away, just like everyone else had. "You think I'm gonna leave?" Lucas had shouted, his voice raw. "Ethan, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Ethan had stood there, silent, his throat tight with guilt and fear. They didn't talk for 2 days. But Lucas showed up at Ethan's apartment with a bag of apples and a sheepish grin. "I'm sorry," he said. "Let's figure this out together." They did. Slowly. They learned each other's rhythms, their flaws, their triggers. They moved in together a year later, into a cramped but cozy apartment in Logan Square. It wasn't perfect. Lucas left sawdust on the floor from his projects, and Ethan's late-night design sessions kept Lucas awake, but it was home. One evening, as they walked home from the grocery store where they'd met, Lucas stopped short. "You ever think about more?" he asked, his voice tentative. Ethan frowned, shifting the grocery bag in his arms. "More? Like what?" "Like family. Kids." Lucas's cheeks flushed, and he looked away, as if bracing for rejection. Ethan's heart raced. Family. The idea felt huge, terrifying, but also right. "Yeah," he said softly. "I've thought about it." Lucas's smile was brighter than the streetlights. "Good. Because I want that. With you." The idea took root. Fragile but persistent. They started researching adoption, navigating the labyrinth of paperwork and interviews. It was daunting, 2 gay men in a world that didn't always accept them, trying to build a family. But every step, every hurdle, they faced together. The adoption process was a maze of forms, home visits, and waiting. Ethan and Lucas sat through countless meetings with social workers, their hands clasped under the table, answering questions about their relationship, their finances, their readiness to parent. Ethan's nerves frayed with every scrutiny, his old fears whispering that they'd be found wanting. Lucas, ever the optimist, kept him grounded, squeezing his hand during tense silences, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. One rainy afternoon, they sat in a drab office, facing a social worker named Ms. Carter. She was kind but direct, her glasses perched low on her nose as she reviewed their file. "You've got a strong case," she said, her voice measured. "But it's not easy for couples like you. Some agencies, some birth parents, they have biases." Ethan's stomach twisted, but Lucas leaned forward, his jaw set. "We're ready to fight for this. We want a kid who needs a home, and we've got one to give." Ms. Carter nodded, a small smile breaking through her professionalism. "I believe you. Let's keep moving forward." Months passed, each day a mix of hope and frustration. Ethan threw himself into work, designing logos late into the night to distract himself from the uncertainty. Lucas took on extra carpentry jobs, saving for the future they dreamed of. They argued sometimes about money, about Ethan's tendency to shut down, about Lucas's stubborn optimism, but they always found their way back to each other. One evening, as they cooked dinner in their tiny kitchen, the phone rang. Ethan froze, spatula in hand. As Lucas answered, the agency's voice crackled through the speaker. A baby girl, 3 months old, needed a home. Her birth mother had chosen them. Ethan's knees buckled, and Lucas caught him, both of them laughing and crying as they held each other. Her name was Lily. They met her the next day, a tiny bundle with dark curls and wide, curious eyes. Ethan's heart ached as he held her, her small weight anchoring him to the moment. Lucas, usually so composed, was a mess, wiping tears as he whispered, "She's ours." Bringing Lily home changed everything. Their apartment, once cluttered with art supplies and woodworking tools, now held a crib, diapers, and bottles. Ethan learned to change diapers with fumbling hands, while Lucas mastered the art of soothing Lily's cries with soft lullabies. They took turns waking at night, bleary-eyed but smiling, marveling at the life they'd been entrusted with. But parenting was harder than they'd imagined. Lily's cries pierced the night, relentless, and Ethan's patience wore thin after sleepless weeks. Lucas, usually unflappable, snapped one morning when Ethan left bottles unwashed. "I can't do this alone," Lucas said, his voice sharp with exhaustion. Ethan flinched, guilt flooding him. "I'm trying." "Okay. This is new for me too." They stood in silence, Lily fussing in her crib. Then Lucas sighed, pulling Ethan into a hug. "We're in this together. Always." They found a rhythm, imperfect but steady. Ethan took Lily to the park, pushing her stroller while Lucas worked late. Lucas built a tiny wooden mobile for her crib, stars and moons spinning above her. They laughed over her first smile, her first babble, the way she gripped their fingers with surprising strength. But the world outside their apartment wasn't always kind. At the grocery store, the same one where they'd met, a woman glared when Ethan kissed Lucas's cheek while holding Lily. Some people shouldn't be parents, she muttered, loud enough to hear. Ethan's face burned, but Lucas squeezed his hand. Ignore her, he said, his voice steady. We're her dads, and she's lucky to have us. Ethan nodded, but the words lingered, a reminder of the world's judgment. He wondered if he was enough for Lily, for Lucas, for the family they were building. That night, he lay awake, listening to Lily's soft breaths, and vowed to be better, stronger, for them both. The seasons changed, and Lily grew. By her first birthday, she was a whirlwind of energy, toddling around the apartment, her laughter filling the space. Ethan and Lucas threw a small party, inviting a few friends who'd become their chosen family. The living room was a mess of balloons and cake crumbs, but Ethan felt a warmth he hadn't known was possible. As they cleaned up after the party, Lucas pulled Ethan close. We're doing okay, aren't we? He asked, his voice soft. Ethan smiled, resting his forehead against Lucas's. Yeah, better than okay. But life had a way of testing them. A call came from Ethan's mother, who hadn't spoken to him since he came out at 18. She wanted to meet Lily, to see her granddaughter. Ethan's heart raced with hope and dread. Could he trust her? Could he let her into their world? Ethan stared at the phone, his mother's voice echoing in his mind. She'd sounded softer than he remembered, but the years of silence weighed heavy. Lucas sat across from him at the kitchen table, Lily asleep in her crib, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge. You don't have to decide now, Lucas said, his hand resting on Ethan's. But if you want to try, I'm with you. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. I want Lily to have family. But what if she hasn't changed? Lucas's eyes were steady. Then we protect our daughter. Together. They arranged to meet Ethan's mother, Diane, at a park near their apartment. It was a crisp fall day, leaves crunching underfoot, the air sharp with the promise of winter. Diane was older than Ethan remembered, her hair graying, her face lined, but her eyes were the same, sharp and searching. She held a small gift bag, her hands trembling slightly. Ethan, she said, her voice catching. You look good. He managed a nod, holding Lily close. She squirmed, reaching for a leaf on the ground. Lucas stood beside him, a quiet strength, ready to step in if needed. Diane's gaze softened as she looked at Lily. She's beautiful, she whispered, then hesitated. I'm sorry, Ethan, for everything. The words hit like a punch. Ethan wanted to believe her, wanted to bridge the gap of years. But trust was a fragile thing. Why now? He asked, his voice low. Diane's eyes glistened. I was wrong. I let fear and ignorance win. I want to know my granddaughter. I want to know you. They talked for an hour, cautious and halting. Diane shared stories of her life, of regrets, of the slow change in her heart. Ethan listened, torn between hope and caution. When they parted, she hugged him, and he let her, though his arms stayed stiff. Back home, Ethan paced the living room, Lily napping in her room. What if she hurts us again? He asked Lucas, his voice raw. Lucas pulled him close. Then we'll handle it. But maybe she's trying. Maybe people can change. Ethan wanted to believe it, but doubt gnawed at him. Over the next few weeks, Diane called regularly, asking about Lily, sending small gifts: a stuffed bear, a tiny sweater. Ethan softened, but he kept his guard up, watching for signs of the judgment he'd grown up with. Meanwhile, life with Lily was a whirlwind. She was walking now, her steps wobbly but determined, her laughter a constant in their home. Ethan loved watching Lucas with her, how he'd scoop her up, spinning her until she giggled, or build tiny wooden toys that she'd chew on gleefully. But the demands of parenting tested them. Ethan's freelance work was unsteady, and Lucas's carpentry jobs were inconsistent. Money was tight, and stress crept into their conversations. One night, after a long day, Ethan snapped when Lucas forgot to pay a bill. "You said you'd handle it," he said, his voice sharp. "We can't mess this up, Lucas. Not with Lily." Lucas's face hardened. "I'm doing my best. You think this is easy for me?" The argument escalated, voices rising until Lily's cries cut through the tension. They stopped, guilt washing over them. Ethan picked her up, soothing her, while Lucas rubbed his temples. "We can't keep doing this," Lucas said quietly. "We're better than this." Ethan nodded, his chest tight. "I know. I'm sorry." They sat together, Lily between them, and made a plan: better communication, shared responsibilities, no more letting stress win. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Diane's presence grew steadier. She visited again, bringing homemade cookies, playing with Lily on the living room floor. Ethan watched, wary but hopeful, as Lily babbled at her grandmother. Lucas nudged him, whispering, "She's trying. Give her a chance." Ethan did. Slowly. He invited Diane to Lily's second birthday, a small gathering in their apartment. She brought a handmade quilt, her hands shaking as she gave it to Ethan. "My mother made one for me," she said. "I wanted Lily to have one too." Ethan's eyes stung. He hugged her, and this time, his arms weren't stiff. It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully. But it was a step. As winter settled over Chicago, Ethan and Lucas faced new challenges. A neighbor, a man in his 50s with a permanent scowl, started leaving notes on their door: complaints about Lily's crying, veiled jabs about their kind raising a child. Ethan's stomach churned every time he saw a new note, but Lucas tore them up, refusing to let them win. "We're a family," Lucas said, his voice fierce. "No one gets to make us feel less than that." Ethan nodded, drawing strength from Lucas's resolve. They kept going, loving Lily, loving each other, building a life in a world that didn't always understand them. The notes from the neighbor stopped, but the tension lingered. Ethan felt it every time he left the apartment, wondering who else was watching, judging. He tried to focus on the good: Lily's growing vocabulary, Lucas's steady presence, but the weight of the world's eyes pressed on him. Lucas noticed, pulling him aside one evening after Lily was asleep. "You're carrying too much," Lucas said, his hands on Ethan's shoulders. "Talk to me." Ethan sighed, sinking onto the couch. I want to be enough. For you. For her. But what if I'm not?" Lucas knelt in front of him, his green eyes fierce. You are more than enough. We're building something real. Ethan, don't let the world tell you otherwise. They decided to get out of the city for a weekend, needing a break from the noise, both literal and figurative. They rented a small cabin in Wisconsin. Just the three of them. The air was crisp, the lake nearby glittering under the autumn sun. Lily toddled through the grass, chasing leaves, while Ethan and Lucas watched, their hands intertwined. This is what I want, Ethan said, his voice soft. Us. Like this. Lucas kissed his temple. We've got it. And we'll keep it. The weekend was a bomb. A reminder of what they were fighting for. But back in Chicago, reality waited. Ethan's freelance work dried up, leaving them leaning on Lucas's income. The stress crept back, fraying their patience. One night, as they argued over a late utility bill, Lucas slammed a cabinet door, startling Lily. Her cries cut through the tension, and Ethan scooped her up, his heart pounding. We can't keep doing this, Ethan said, his voice shaking. She deserves better. Lucas's face softened, guilt in his eyes. You're right. Let's fix this. They sat down, Lily asleep in Ethan's arms, and made a budget, a plan to stabilize their finances. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, a commitment to their family. Diane became a regular part of their lives, her presence a quiet surprise. She babysat Lily when Ethan and Lucas needed a night out, her once awkward demeanor softening with every visit. Ethan watched her with Lily, reading bedtime stories, and felt a cautious hope. Maybe family could be rebuilt, piece by piece. But not everyone was so accepting. At a local playground, a mother pulled her child away when Ethan and Lucas arrived with Lily. I don't want my son around, she said, loud enough for them to hear. Ethan's face burned, but Lucas stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Our daughter's playing here, same as yours. We're not going anywhere. The woman left, but the encounter left Ethan shaken. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. What if Lily grows up hearing that? He asked Lucas. What if she's ashamed of us? Lucas turned to him, his hand finding Ethan's in the dark. We'll teach her to be proud. Of us. Of herself. We'll give her the strength we didn't always have. Lily's third birthday arrived, a milestone that felt like a victory. They threw a party at the park, Diane helping with decorations, their friends filling the space with laughter. Lily ran through the grass, a paper crown slipping off her head, her joy infectious. Ethan watched, his heart full, and realized how far they'd come. But challenges never stayed away for long. Lucas's carpentry work slowed as winter approached, and Ethan's freelance gigs weren't enough. They dipped into savings, the stress mounting. One evening, as they sat over a stack of bills, Lucas suggested moving to a smaller town, somewhere cheaper, where they could start fresh. Ethan hesitated. Chicago was where they'd met, where they'd built their life. But the idea of a fresh start, a place where Lily could grow up without the city's judgment, was tempting. They talked late into the night, weighing the risks, the possibilities. The decision wasn't easy, but they chose a small town in Michigan, near Lake Huron. It was a risk leaving the city. Their friends. Diane, but it felt right. They found a modest house with a big backyard. Perfect for Lily. The move was chaotic. Boxes everywhere. Lily underfoot. But they laughed through the mess, building new memories. As they settled in, Ethan felt a shift. The town was quiet. The people cautious but not unkind. They enrolled Lily in a preschool. And Ethan found steady design work with a local firm. Lucas started a small carpentry business. His hands always busy. They were building something new. Together. The Michigan air was different, crisper. Quieter. Carrying the scent of pine and lake water. Their new home was a fixer-upper. With creaky floors and a leaky faucet. But it was theirs. Ethan and Lucas spent weekends painting walls. Lily leaving tiny handprints in the primer. Giggling as they chased her with a rag. It was a fresh start. But the past clung to them. Shadows of doubt and fear. Lily thrived in preschool. Her chatter filling the house with stories of new friends and finger-painting disasters. Ethan watched her, marveling at her resilience, her joy. But he couldn't shake the worry, what would she face as the daughter of two dads in a small town? Lucas, ever the optimist, brushed it off. Kids are tougher than we think, he said. She'll be okay. One afternoon, Ethan picked Lily up from preschool and noticed a group of parents whispering, their eyes darting toward him. He tightened his grip on Lily's hand, her backpack bouncing as they walked to the car. Daddy, why do they stare? She asked, her voice small. Ethan's heart sank. He knelt, forcing a smile. Some people are just curious. Sweetheart. But you're perfect. And so are we. That night, he told Lucas, his voice tight with anger. Lucas's jaw clenched, but he kept his tone even. We knew this might happen. We'll show them who we are, good parents. Good people. They did. They volunteered at preschool events. Brought cookies to community picnics. Invited neighbors over for barbecues. Slowly, some walls came down. A neighbor, an older woman named Clara, became a friend, sharing stories of her own children and slipping Lily extra cookies. But others remained distant, their smiles polite but cold. Finances stabilized, but the strain of the move lingered. Ethan's new job was demanding, leaving him drained. Lucas's business was slow to start. The town's economy sluggish. They argued more small things, like whose turn it was to do laundry, escalating into bigger fears. One night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan snapped when Lucas left tools scattered across the kitchen. Why can't you clean up? Ethan said, his voice sharp. I'm killing myself at work. And you're doing what I can. Lucas cut in, his eyes flashing. You think I'm not trying? I'm building a business from nothing. Ethan. The air crackled with tension. Years of unspoken fears bubbling up. Ethan's voice broke. What if we can't make this work? What if we're not enough for her? Lucas's face softened. He crossed the room, pulling Ethan into his arms. We're enough. We've always been enough. They held each other, the fight dissolving into quiet resolve. They made a pact, no more letting stress tear them apart. They'd face the world together. For Lily. For each other. Diane visited, driving up from Ohio to see their new home. She marveled at the backyard. helped Lily plant a small garden, and sat with Ethan and Lucas over coffee. Her presence a quiet comfort. "I'm proud of you," she told Ethan, her eyes misty. "You've built something beautiful." Ethan's throat tightened. He was starting to believe her. But the world tested them again. At a town meeting about school funding, parents stood up, questioning alternative families like theirs. Ethan's stomach churned. But Lucas spoke up, his voice steady. "Our daughter deserves the same chances as any kid. We're here. We're staying. And we're raising her right." The room was silent. Then Clara clapped, and others joined. It wasn't unanimous, but it was a start. Ethan squeezed Lucas's hand, pride swelling in his chest. Lily's 4th birthday was a quiet celebration. Just them, Diane, and Clara. They ate cake in the backyard, Lily blowing out candles with a grin. Ethan watched, his heart full, and realized they were building a life that mattered, not perfect, but real. As summer faded, Ethan and Lucas faced a new challenge. Lucas's business was struggling. They sat down, spreadsheets spread across the table, and made hard choices, cutting expenses, taking on side jobs. It was grueling, but they did it together, their bond stronger for it. The Michigan winter was brutal, snow piling high outside their small house. Ethan and Lucas took turns shoveling the driveway, their breaths puffing in the cold air, while Lily built lopsided snowmen in the yard. The struggle to keep Lucas's business afloat weighed on them. But they found moments of joy: Lily's laughter, late-night talks over hot cocoa, the warmth of their home against the cold. Ethan's job at the design firm was steady, but the long hours left him drained. He missed Lily's bedtime stories, hated the guilt that gnawed at him. Lucas, meanwhile, was working late, taking on small repair jobs to make ends meet. They were stretched thin, but they refused to let it break them. One evening, as Ethan worked on a project, Lucas came home, his face tight with worry. "I lost a big client today," he said, tossing his coat on a chair. "They went with a bigger company." Ethan's stomach dropped. "We'll figure it out," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The tension built over weeks. They argued over small things: dishes, schedules, whose turn it was to take Lily to preschool. One night, after a particularly bad day, Ethan snapped, "I'm doing everything I can. Lucas, what more do you want?" Lucas's eyes flashed. "I want you to trust me. I'm not giving up. So why are you?" The words stung, and Ethan walked away, needing air. He stood in the backyard, snow crunching under his boots, his breath visible in the cold. He loved Lucas, loved their life, but the weight of it all felt crushing. When he came back inside, Lucas was sitting on the couch, head in his hands. "I'm scared too," Lucas admitted, his voice low. "But we've got this. We always do." Ethan sat beside him, their hands finding each other. "I'm sorry," he said. I want us to be okay." "We will be," Lucas said, and they held on, the fight fading into a quiet promise. Spring brought new hope. Lucas landed a contract to build custom furniture for a local cafe. A small but steady job. Ethan's firm offered him a promotion. More responsibility but better pay. They celebrated with a picnic by Lake Huron. Lily splashing in the shallows, her laughter echoing across the water. The town was warming to them. Slowly, Clara introduced them to other families, and Ethan started to feel like they belonged. But not everyone was kind. At a school event, a parent made a snide comment about non-traditional families. Ethan's fists clenched, but Lucas touched his arm, grounding him. "We're her dads," Lucas said calmly. "That's all that matters." The parent backed off, but the encounter left Ethan shaken. He worried about Lily, about the world she'd grow up in. That night, he tucked her in, her small hand clutching his finger. "I love you, Daddy," she said, her voice sleepy. "I love you too," Ethan whispered, his heart aching with love and fear. Diane's visits became a lifeline. She brought stability, a reminder of family they'd fought to rebuild. One weekend, she stayed for a week, helping with Lily while Ethan and Lucas caught up on work. As they sat together one evening, Diane looked at them, her eyes soft. "You're doing something I never could," she said. "You're giving her a home full of love." Ethan's throat tightened. He hugged her, grateful for her presence, for the chance to heal old wounds. But life kept testing them. Lucas's business hit another rough patch, and Ethan's promotion came with longer hours. They were exhausted, stretched thin, but they leaned on each other, finding strength in their shared commitment. As summer approached, they planned a trip to Chicago, a chance to reconnect with old friends and show Lily the city where they'd met. The thought of returning filled Ethan with both nostalgia and nerves. Would the city feel like home, or a reminder of struggles they'd left behind? The Chicago trip was a whirlwind. They stayed with friends in Logan Square, the familiar streets a mix of comfort and strangeness. Lily marveled at the city's noise, her eyes wide as they walked past the grocery store where Ethan and Lucas had met. They stopped, standing in the produce aisle, hands clasped, Lily between them. "Feels like a lifetime ago," Ethan said, his voice soft. Lucas grinned, squeezing his hand. "Best apples I ever bought." Their friends threw a small party, filling their old apartment with laughter and memories. Lily played with other kids, her energy boundless, while Ethan and Lucas caught up with friends who'd become family. But the city's pace reminded them why they'd left: the noise, the judgment, the constant hustle. They loved Chicago, but Michigan was home now. Back in Michigan, they settled into a new rhythm. Lucas's business picked up, his furniture gaining local attention. Ethan's promotion stabilized their finances, letting them breathe easier. They started a college fund for Lily, a small but hopeful step toward her future. But the world wasn't done challenging them. At a town festival, a group of teenagers taunted them, their words sharp with ignorance. Ethan's heart raced, but Lucas stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You've got something to say. Say it to our faces." The teens backed off, but the encounter left Ethan shaken. He worried about Lily, about the hate she might face. That night, he sat with Lucas, his voice low. "How do we protect her from this?" Lucas's eyes were steady. "We teach her who she is. We show her love. Every day." They did. They read her stories about families like theirs, talked openly about their love, their struggles. Lily, 4, was too young to understand fully, but she absorbed their strength, their pride. Diane's presence grew stronger. She moved closer, to a small apartment an hour away, wanting to be near her granddaughter. Ethan was cautious but grateful, letting her into their lives more fully. She joined them for Sunday dinners, her laughter blending with Lily's, a sound Ethan hadn't known he needed. But the biggest challenge came unexpectedly. Lucas's father, who hadn't spoken to him in years, reached out. He was sick, wanted to see Lucas, to meet Lily. Lucas was torn, old wounds raw. Ethan listened as Lucas wrestled with the decision, his voice breaking. "I don't know if I can forgive him," Lucas said. "But what if I regret not trying?" Ethan held him, his heart aching. "Whatever you choose, I'm here." Lucas decided to go, taking Ethan and Lily to Kentucky. The visit was tense. Lucas's father frail but remorseful. "I was wrong," he said, his voice weak. "I want to know my son, my granddaughter." Lucas nodded, his jaw tight, but he let his father hold Lily, her small hand clutching his finger. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Back home, Ethan and Lucas faced their own reckoning. The years had tested them fights, fears, the weight of the world, but they'd held on. One night, as they sat in the backyard, Lily asleep inside, Ethan took Lucas's hand. "We've been through a lot," he said. "But I'd do it all again. With you." Lucas smiled, his eyes glistening. "Me too. Always." They talked about the future Lily's dreams. Their own. They wanted to grow old together, to see Lily thrive, to build a life that proved love could withstand anything. The years passed, each one a tapestry of joy and struggle. Lily grew into a bright, curious 5-year-old, her laughter a constant in their home. Ethan and Lucas built a life rooted in love, their small Michigan town slowly becoming a place of belonging. Clara, their neighbor, became a surrogate grandmother, baking with Lily and sharing stories of her own childhood. Diane was a steady presence, her bond with Ethan healing old wounds. Lucas's business thrived, his furniture now in homes across the county. Ethan's career flourished, his designs gaining recognition. They saved for Lily's future, dreaming of her possibilities: college, travel, a life full of choices they'd fought to give her. But the world still challenged them. At Lily's kindergarten orientation, a parent questioned their family, their tone dripping with judgment. Ethan's heart raced, but Lucas spoke up, his voice calm but unyielding. "Our daughter's loved, safe, and happy. That's what matters." The room shifted, some nodding, others silent. Ethan squeezed Lucas's hand, pride swelling. They were a team, unbreakable. They taught Lily to navigate the world's complexities. When a classmate teased her about having 2 dads, she came home, eyes wet but fierce. "I told them you love me," she said. "That's enough." Ethan hugged her, his heart full. "It's more than enough, sweetheart." One spring evening, as they walked by Lake Huron, Lily skipping ahead, Ethan and Lucas reflected on their journey. The grocery store meeting, the fights, the joys. The family they'd built, it was a life they hadn't dared dream of in their youth. "We did this," Ethan said, his voice thick. We made a home. Lucas pulled him close, kissing his forehead. And we'll keep making it. For her. For us. They stood there, watching Lily chase waves, her laughter carrying over the water. The world wasn't perfect, but their love was a fierce, stubborn thing that had carried them through. Years later, at Lily's high school graduation, Ethan and Lucas sat in the audience, hands clasped, tears in their eyes. Lily, now a confident young woman, gave a speech about love, resilience, and family. My dad's taught me that love is a choice, she said, her voice clear. Every day, they chose me, each other, and a life that's ours. The crowd applauded, and Ethan leaned into Lucas, his heart full. They'd faced judgment, fear, and doubt, but they'd built something unbreakably, a family defined not by the world's rules, but by their own. As they walked home, Lily between them, Ethan looked at Lucas, his green eyes still as warm as that day in the grocery store. Worth every fight, Ethan said. Lucas grinned, squeezing his hand. And every joy. Their story wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt, but also more laughter, more love. In that small town, in that house with creaky floors, they'd found their place. A chance meeting had become a lifetime, and they carried it forward. Together, always.